And we're back on Sunday morning at 11:30 with myself and Brooke. And this week we thought we'd go into Feng Shui, which is a traditional method of orienting yourself, your environment, your house, your everything to the environment, basically, or to the world. Um, I learned about it probably, I don't know, 35 years ago or so, and read some books, but didn't really get in depth. Just picked up the basic principles. And then Brooke last week had mentioned that she has a book called Feng Shui and Health, subtitled "Using Feng Shui to Disarm Illness, Accelerate Recovery, and Create Optimal Health" by Nancy SantoPietro. And it turns out she's pretty well known. She was a psychotherapist for many years. And then I think in her introduction, she says in her 30s or 40s, she started getting some sort of mysterious illnesses and kind of wasn't able to function very well.
Yeah.
And so over the years, she came upon the idea of feng shui. Um, and Brooke, you want to relate how you got or found this book? Because I had not heard of it before until you mentioned it last week. You want to relay how you came upon that?
Yeah, so and through the Infinici people who I've gotten to know over the past year, I was interested in learning more about feng shui and not just about the, at home decorative part of it. And I emailed them asking if they knew of or carried a feng shui book. And this was the book that they recommended and they said they used to actually carry. So I ordered it on Amazon and now the rest is today.
Yeah, I over the years when I look up books and so forth, I find if you can Google books, actually it's books.google.com, and just put
Mm-hmm.
in a title, and they have pretty much everything, of course, that you can buy. But not
Yeah.
only that, they have excerpts from the books. You can usually read two or three or even more chapters of each book. So I was able to preview the first few chapters of the book this week. So that's a good resource, Google Books.
Yeah.
Of course, Amazon has the same thing where you can preview books,
Yeah.
but for some reason, Google, you can read more
Then
than Amazon has. I'm not sure how they managed to do that, but like this particular book, I think Amazon maybe had maybe one chapter, but Google had a couple chapters, so they went had a little more in it. And I find that seems to be universal. Google has more chapters to read than Amazon for some reason.
I like digital books and I do read them. However, when it comes to when I study and I'm really truly trying to study a book, I have to have it in my hands. People make fun of me. I have so many tags like sticking out of all my books. They're actually like color coordinated, and just because I just reference them so much. So
Yeah, I too would rather have the book. I have a Kindle,
yeah,
which I've actually got several of these. All of them have been gifts or won in contests of some sort, coincidentally.
yeah,
In fact, I was trying to remember how I got this. This particular one is the least expensive Kindle they have, and I think you can buy them for like $49 or on sale for like $39. It's just amazing how
yeah,
inexpensive they are nowadays.
yeah,
Um, but anyway, so I downloaded the chapters from Amazon on here, so I'm looking through here now. The forward to her book, by the way, was by Professor Thomas Lin Yoon Rinpoche,
yeah,
who, from the what I could glean from just googling him and so forth, he has a method of feng shui that is kind of a westernized version of
yes.
the ancient teachings, and I think he started in the 70s or something here in the
And
United
I think
States.
he does the illustrations too in the book. Like each chapter.
Ah,
Oh my gosh, they're so beautiful.
Yeah, I did notice a few of those on the download that I had. Okay, let's see. I marked something in here. Well, she starts the book with a little story about she calls it the starfish man. I'm not sure if this is a traditional story or what the deal
It is. I
was.
love that story.
Yeah, do you know it from memory? You want me to read it?
Oh, no, I wish I had
Okay.
one day.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, I'll just summarize there. Um, one morning, a young boy went for a walk on the beach, and he noticed an old man stooping down to pick up starfish and fling them into the sea. And catching up with the old man, the boy asked him what he was doing. The old man answered that the stranded starfish would die unless they were returned to the water. And the little boy says, "But the beach goes on for miles and there are millions of starfish. How can what you're doing make any difference?" And the old man looked at the starfish in his hand and then threw it safely in the waves, saying, "It makes a difference to this one."
Oh yeah,
So each living or even non-living thing makes a difference.
absolutely.
Although sometimes in our in our rush of the modern world, we figure, well, what's one fish, or what's one human, or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And she talks about her story, and she says in 1989 she had not heard of Feng Shui, which is pronounced differently than it's spelled because it's
Yes.
yeah, so I can remember having trouble with that before. Um, and the art originated more than 4,000 years ago in Asia, and its premise is that invisible energy fields exist in our homes and workplaces, and those energy fields are created by the way we place our furniture and design our homes. In some ways, you can almost uh, think of this as kind of a common sense, or in another way, that over millions of years we've come to some common sense
Mhm.
that maybe 10,000 years ago there was in fact a reason for placing things in a certain way and
Yep.
facing in certain directions.
Yep.
And then as we learned language and writing and so forth, it became codified into what she's writing about and what the professor writes about. So now, and some people, you really these invisible energy fields. People say, "Oh, there's no such thing." Well,
Yeah.
you know, you can't see electricity, and you can't see magnetism,
But it's
and
still
of
there.
course, yeah, and it's there. And these invisible, traditionally called invisible fields could well be electrical and magnetic and something else we don't even know about yet.
Oh yeah. I mean, one of the things, even my father's a scientist. He's an astro physicist, and as scientific as he was, I mean, like, just his teachings taught me just how much I of the invisible that really does matter, that so many people just throw away is not an idea.
Yeah. Yeah, so she goes on and talks about these energy fields have a profound effect on shaping all aspects of our lives, including finances, relationships, and health. And that was her primary focus because she was having these chronic problems, and she wanted to find some way to resolve that. So the feng shui was the way that she came upon.
Yeah.
Um, Now, of course, you are moving or have moved. Have you give some thought to just generally things you want to do or not do in your new environment?
Actually, yeah, and something that's really important that I did, that if anyone really wants to get this book and start reading it with us, one of the first things I did is the thing I will say not to do, and that is I kind of skimmed the book and directly went to the chapter that I wanted to work on, which was, I knew I was going to be getting a new room and I wanted to feng shui my room, and I read that chapter and felt so overwhelmed. And there were so many things I needed to do and get, and so many measurements, and I was like, wow, like it's amazing I'm still alive, and I'm don't need an exorcism or something like that to fix myself. So I backtracked and I started from chapter 1, and she really lays the book out quite effectively, to the point where it isn't as overwhelming, especially if you do the activities that she gives you throughout the book. I have noticed a drastic change since I have been using this book along with my move. I've been so overwhelmed. I'm moving quite a distance. I drive, it's pretty much a 2-hour drive every day. And I work 2 jobs and I have 2 kids, and I was exhausted to the point where by like Friday and Saturday, I would just cry out of sheer exhaustion. And I started realizing as I was reading the book that it actually wasn't physical exhaustion. It was mental. It was energy exhaustion. And just by slowly working through the book, I'm able to oh shoot, I just lost the word, but I'm able to do all the things that are expected of me, and still have energy at the end of the day, and not feel down and not feel overwhelmed. And as I get my room together, I walk into my room and it's this breath of fresh air. I feel like all my weight, it just suddenly leaves me as soon as I walk through my bedroom door. I cannot say in more ways that this is so needed in anybody's life.
Yeah, she says here early on in the book that she found that when an individual has an illness or a predisposition to an illness, if that
Yep.
individual finds himself living or frequenting an environment that also vibrates with the same illness patterns, we create a set of energetic variables that can come together and can either ex, I can't say the word, exacerbate an existing illness or manifest one that is otherwise dormant.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the premise that, and then she later on talks about it goes from, like, the universe to the world to the country to the county to the city to your house to
Yep.
yourself. So,
Yep. Your
so
family,
everything
everything. Yep.
is related, and so the idea suggests that you have a choice somewhat in all those things, not necessarily that you can choose which world you want to live on, but you can, to some extent choose your neighborhood or even your city or even a state or a country for that matter. So she was saying, for example, now, of course, it's not ironclad that you have to, you know, go by these rules absolutely, but she's
No.
saying, like, if you are in a neighborhood where there's a lot of crime, for example, or drugs, or just bad behavior,
Hmm.
that might be a neighborhood that you don't want to be there, living
Yep.
there, because those vibrations, that environment is going to affect you and your health. Uh, and then, of course, there are certain circumstances where sometimes people cannot avoid, living in a certain place just because of their situation in life.
Yeah.
But if you have a choice, you want to observe that. So you're looking for a new place. You want to see what the neighborhood's like. What kind of people are like. Are there a lot of depressed people around? A lot of happy people around? A lot of very, very busy people, laid
Yeah.
back people. So you fit that into what you want as your vibrations or your lifestyle.
You can also, as if like, so I didn't have a choice, or many choices to choose from where I could live. And I very much walked into a situation where I could, just like you said, I was drawn to a certain energy, a certain place where I could have kept up the same pattern that I was used to living. Or I could choose to follow and study feng shui and change myself and change at least my little tiny room core environment, and maybe possibly expand and start changing, you know, larger and larger and larger areas around me, the kitchen, the living room, eventually like the whole house. Maybe I can help change just the structure and energy just by being an example of my own living. Does that make sense? Like Lao Tzu always says, you know, you start with yourself, then you build a family, and it slowly creates a country, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly right. In fact, she said in her case, she discovered that by working with her internal energy system, which is what you're talking about, sometimes called the chakras,
Mm-hmm.
and the external energy system, the Feng Shui, your external environment, you can approach dismantling your illness vibrationally from both the inside and the outside vibrational forms, she says. So she calls it this dual approach can alter and transmute an illness, making it more receptive to medicines, treatments, processes, and prayer. So that's really what you said. You know,
Yeah,
certain circumstances where you have to be in a certain place. Well,
exactly.
you work internally to cope with or live with that circumstance.
Yeah.
Um, then as she talks about going, you know, so you got your neighborhood, you got your neighbors, now you're in the house, and she gives um, the basic things about your house, for example. And a lot of these are traditional. I can remember reading about them in many books. For
Mm-hmm.
example, your house should be situated in really a safe location. Last week I
Yeah.
was talking about one of my neighbors has his house located right at the entrance of our
The
uh,
cul-de-sac.
neighborhood. Yeah, and so cars are literally driving straight up to his house, and if somebody's brake fails, they're going to go right through his front door. So,
Aw,
in the traditional feng shui, you would say you do not want to live in such a
yeah,
situation.
at that
You
house.
know, not only for the energy, that invisible energy thing, but just for the practical matter.
Mhm.
You know, you don't want somebody driving through your front door in an accident. Um, and then
And
she talks about the your front door. I'm trying to think. She's talking about like um, if you're seated. I can't remember exactly, but there's ways you want to locate yourself according to where your doors and windows are, so that
yeah,
you either get that energy that you need or avoid bad energy coming in.
yeah, there's just the front door is, I mean, you could write an entire book just about the energy that comes into your front door. So like you really should never have steps going up to your front door, I found out. And if you do, you should have something reflective on the bottom to help reflect some of that. Like you're in your neighborhood, if I had to live in that house, I would plant a very large tree or bush or something in front of the door, like into the yard, to help. You want to like navigate and move the energy flow, or change the type of energy flow that's going into the house. Oh yeah, there's so many things. One of the things I talked about, you're supposed to put a bell, brass bells, some kind of sound on your door every time it opens. And it seems so silly, but if you know how we were talking about physics and like all these invisible energies, I'm just think of like the time period. It's always good to know that your front door is being opened, who's coming in, you know, almost like an alarm system like we have today. It just makes so much sense if you take it and think about it.
Yeah. Um, I've been teaching Tai Chi for, they call it Tai Chi for better balance. The idea is to prevent falls.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of those feng shui ideas are, in fact, good safety recommendations.
Yep. Yeah.
The stairs thing, for example, we teach our folks to try not to have stairs you have to be going up and down, especially at the entrance of your house, because that's a typical place you're going to fall. So
Yes.
Feng Shui has found that out thousands of years ago. You got to be careful about having stairs going into your house.
No, true.
And um, I think one of the ideas, like if you're in an office, you want to be able to look out the window, and that's a safety thing too, especially in the old days. Say 100 years ago or something. You want to know who that stranger is coming up to your door or your house. So
Absolutely.
just a common sense thing. You want to be able to see out. So Feng Shui says, do not have your back to a door or a window when you're working, because
Yep.
just for the safety, and also for the subtle alertness that if you are working away and all of a sudden something comes up behind you, you're startled,
Yep.
and it just interrupts your whole flow and your whole energy right there. But if
Exactly.
you were actually able to look and see, oh, there's John from next door, you're not going to be startled or worried, and you can still continue your flow.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of practicality.
Absolutely. And even with the design, like if you set your house up that is efficient in those kinds of ways, you get the quote unquote wu wei, where you can move through your house with efficiency and get things done without those startles and without having to stop and go somewhere else. If everything was where they should be, I mean, imagine all the time we'd save, the energy, all of that.
Yeah. Another thing that's big in feng shui art is mirrors,
Yes.
and again, practical thing for that too. The traditional idea was the mirrors would divert energy, in a way. So if you got too much energy, you can divert it into a different area, or it can collect energy. But again, if you think about it, there's a practical safety point to that too. So if you're in a room where there's a blind corner, you
Yep.
could have somebody coming up and startle you again. But if you had that mirror, you saw, well, that's my little boy or whatever. So
Yeah.
so you're not startled. So the mirrors play an important part. And interestingly enough, when I visit somebody's house or office, I'm kind of conscious of the mirrors or the lack of mirrors, and it seems like almost there's some people who intuitively know the importance of mirrors,
Yeah.
because they're placed in places that um, allow you to see these hidden corners, kind of, so to speak, in a room.
Hmm.
They're not decorative mirrors necessarily, because you wouldn't necessarily sit there and comb your hair in it. They're not in the right place to do that. So it's almost like there's some intuition that people have to say, well, yeah, I need a mirror on that wall there,
Yeah.
or a mirror over here, or maybe one down low here or something. So it's kind
Yeah.
of interesting to note what mirrors people have or do not have, and where they're placed.
I forget which. There's somewhere she says. I think it's further down. I think in chapter 3 or something like that, where she actually says that feng shui and interior design do not necessarily correlate. But if you can somehow intermix the two, I mean, you have such an amazing, thing happening. But yeah, sometimes feng shui isn't always so beautiful and modern, as
Yeah.
they say.
Yeah, well, I'm not a great interior decorator by any means, but from what my understanding is, sometimes modern interior decorating takes a practicality thing, or a beauty idea, and of course beauty changes over the ages. So what's beautiful today might not be beautiful tomorrow. So
Exactly.
uh, so there's kind of a little contrast in between there.
Yeah.
And then there's some of the traditional practices I noticed even in the opening chapters. Oh, and she says, take what works for you, so you don't necessarily have to go through and do every single thing that's
Exactly.
suggested in feng shui.
Yeah.
So she's talking about like getting a crystal and putting it on a certain length of yarn or rope or something. I
Red,
can't remember,
red
string.
thread. Yeah. It has to be
Yeah,
like 9, like increments of 9. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even know that. Yeah, because I was figuring he was giving me these odd numbers, and I was figuring out what
Yeah.
was the reasoning for that. So you get these different links and put a crystal on it, and that helps the energy. So
Yeah.
so some people would do that, and then other people would say, "Well, that's a weird interior design. What do you got that for?" But if
Yeah.
it works for you, you use it. So what the who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is really interesting. Like I said, I was telling you before, I ordered this from our. There's an online library now that anybody that has a library card can go on these online libraries and download books, or even, of course, request a literal book. So I
Yeah.
got an online one uh, on hold that I hope to get. So I'm quite excited about reading more of her
I
book
am
and
too.
getting into this.
Yeah.
Okay, well let's close out this Sunday morning meeting, Brooke,
Yeah.
and we'll continue talking about feng shui and
I
health.
think this was a good introduction, and maybe next week we can really start going through some of the, each chapter where she has all these works, like these activities that you're supposed to do. That'll be,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. Okay. Yeah, in case I don't have the complete book, maybe you can start out on this. I think the area I got to in the book was on the Earth or something like that. A few pages past that section where starts talking about the different literal environments that you work with.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, very good, Brooke. Appreciate your input again today, and we'll look forward to continuing next week on feng shui and your health.
Bye.
All right. See you later.